Okay, we can start. First of all, good morning, good afternoon, good night, good evening, depending which country you are. You are mostly welcome to this webinar, which is the Standing Forest Bioeconomy. It is one of the webinars of a series of webinars that we are promoting before Green Hill Online that's going to happen on October 8 and 9. We're counting on you. Well, we are, first of all, and to have to be very quick to the point, I would like to introduce the panelists, Dr. Eva Müller. She is Director General for Forest, Sustainability and Renewable Resources of the German Federal Ministry for Food and Agriculture. Dr. Carlos Nobre, he is an Earth System Scientist with recognized and highly respected trajectory in the international scientific community. Dr. Carlos Nobre is a senior researcher with the University of São Paulo Institute of Advanced Studies, and he leads the Amazon Third Way Initiative Amazonia 4.0, a very interesting project that I am very proud to follow very close. And who is going to moderate is our dear Marita Koch-Wieser. Marita has a distinguished career in international development. She is an anthropologist and environmentalist, and she is engaged in the build-up of the Rainforest Business School and the University of State of São Paulo, of State of Amazonas. Dear Marita, the floor is yours. I'm counting that we're going to have an excellent webinar. Thank you to each and every one who is—
All right, thank you. So welcome to our two panelists. And I think we have a very important topic that relates to an important area of the world, standing forest and bioeconomy. Particularly, of course, we think in terms of Brazil about the Amazon rainforest, but also other rainforests, of course, on Earth. And we have Germany represented by our first speaker, Dr. Eva Müller, who will talk about the history, a little bit the history, and of course, the current situation, and tell maybe some shared areas of interest in terms of forests in Germany. So to make it short, may I invite you, Dr. Müller, to make your introductory presentation. We very much look forward to it. And then you would be followed by Carlos Nobre's presentation. And then in the third part of our 1 hour meeting here, we will have time to discuss and explore some of the themes you touch on. The floor is yours, Mrs. Müller.
Thank you very much. Bia, could you do me a favor and put the presentation on?
Yes, of course.
So, Mrs. Müller, now your presentation is there.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you again for inviting me to this exciting webinar. I know this webinar is mainly about tropical forests with focus on the Amazon and Brazil. And you may ask yourself, so why is she talking about German forests? That's a good question. But I think there are some issues that we do share, even though the situation and history of our forests may be quite different. In addition to that, of course, as you already heard, I have been working internationally for many years, and I have a keen interest in tropical forests, and actually have worked more on tropical forests than on German forests throughout my life. So that's also for me a reason for joining this webinar. So we are going to have some exchange today about our forests, Germany, Brazil, and their contribution to the bioeconomy. Can I have the next slide, please? Now, German forests have been used for thousands of years, and they have sometimes also been overused. One example, I don't want to go back far into history, but one example that is important for us is that about 300 years ago, there was a German mining official with the name of Hans Karl von Karlowitz. And he was concerned about the overexploitation of German forests and the dwindling supply of wood for mining purposes. And he wrote a book that is called the Silvicultura Economica. And for the first time in this book, he described that only the amount of wood should be harvested that would grow back through plant reforestation. And this was really the birth of German forestry, and it was also the birth of the term sustainability that we use a lot these days. So it goes back 300 years. So in Germany, sustainable forest management has been practiced for a long time. And over time, the term sustainability has taken on also a much broader meaning beyond sustained yield. It now includes the ecological, the economic, the social, and the cultural aspects, of course. Forests in Germany have many functions. They produce wood, they are used a lot for recreation, they are served for climate and water regulation, just to name a few. And most of our forests are production forests, and they are managed simultaneously for a variety of purposes. And we call this multi-purpose management. Next slide, please. Now, this may all sound very good, but there are also some problems. After the Second World War, there was again a large-scale deforestation by the occupying forces in Germany. And then when Germany's economy started growing again, a lot of wood was needed, and reforestation was carried out largely with relatively fast-growing spruce and pine species, which then became the most important commercial species in Germany. Now, 70 years later, we realize that this may have been a mistake, because we are now facing a different kind of deforestation, in quote, which is due to climate change. We've had in the past years exceptionally strong weather events, including storms, droughts, and bark beetle attacks in spruce and pine. And that has destroyed about 245,000 hectares of forests out of a total of 11 million hectares we have. Mostly spruce and pine forests. The drought has also attacked some of the broadleaf species, but major damage is in the spruce and pine forests. Germany is a very densely populated country, and we have managed over time to maintain at least a 30% forest cover. We cannot afford to lose these forests, as they're extremely important for climate change mitigation, and they're an integral part of our climate protection program and also our commitments to the Paris Agreement. Our forests have always been a carbon sink, but now, because of these damages, they are in danger of becoming a source. One problem we're having is that we have about 2 million forest owners, many of which own less than 2 hectares of forest. And in fact, a large majority owns less than 2 hectares. So very, very many small forest owners. Many of these forest owners now live in cities, and they may not have a strong interest in managing their forests anyway, or they get discouraged by the damage to their forests and abandon forest management. In addition to that, because of all the damaged trees lying around, the price of timber has fallen drastically, as there's an oversupply of timber from these damaged forests. And those people, those forest owners who make a living from their forests, they cannot sell the timber anymore, and they're starting to have serious economic problems. So it is clear to us that if we want to keep our forests as carbon sinks, and for all the other values they provide to us, we must keep our forest owners on board. We must keep them interested in actively maintaining and managing their forests. And at the same time, we also realize that we need to adapt our forests more to the changing climate and make them more resilient. Next slide. In this situation, our government has acted quickly and decisively. We in the ministry, together with the German states, have made available about 800 million euro to support private and communal forest owners over the next 4 years to reforest and restore their forests. The financial support program focuses on promoting more mixed forests and more broadleaf species that are more resilient to climate change than the spruce and pine monocultures. But we're also increasing our efforts to strengthen the role of wood in the German bioeconomy through the development of new and innovative products, for example, textiles made from wood fiber, and particularly through the promotion of building more with wood, supporting more wood construction, including larger multi-story buildings. With the so-called Charter for Wood 2.0, the ministry has created a multi-stakeholder process that aims to promote efficient resource utilization, create value through sustainable wood use, and strengthen the contribution of sustainable wood use to achieving climate change mitigation targets. And finally, we are looking for longer term solutions because we realize that climate change will continue. And what is happening now with the droughts and the storms and the damages to our forests is probably not going to end. So we will have to consider that in the future, our forest owners may not be able to generate income only from the sale of timber anymore. So it is time to start thinking about all the other services and values forests provide to us, the so-called ecosystem services. And we are currently working on the idea of developing a system where we can compensate forest owners in the future for these ecosystem services. Next slide, please. So I've given you a brief overview of the history and the situation of German forests and their management. As I said earlier, the situation in Brazil may be very, very different, but I can also see some similarities. Both of our countries have been and are experiencing significant forest loss, even though it's for completely different reasons, maybe. Both countries, I think, are starting to realize that the forest owners or those living in the forests need to be able to generate income from these forests if they are to maintain and sustainably manage them. So we have to be able to provide opportunities for income generation for people in the forest or for people who own the forests, to give them an incentive to maintain the forests as such and to also manage them sustainably. And both of our countries recognize the role of forests in developing the bioeconomy, and we both have developed national bioeconomy strategies. Next slide. Germany and Brazil also have a very long history of cooperation on forests that goes back to the early 1990s. Much of this cooperation has been with the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development and with the Ministry of Environment, and this cooperation has included many, many projects related to the sustainable management of tropical forests, including in the context of climate protection and biodiversity conservation. Now, my ministry, the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, is in charge of agriculture, but my department covers forests, sustainability, and renewable resources. So we are responsible for forests in Germany, for national forest policy, and also the country's international forest policy. For several years now, we have been collaborating with Brazil on the issue of developing the bioeconomy. And we do believe that we have a great potential here to create synergies. The Brazilian and the German Ministries of Agriculture and the Ministries of Science, plus relevant forest research organizations, are partners in this collaboration. Currently, our collaboration focuses on the joint development of bioeconomy research through joint calls by German and Brazilian research organizations and joint funding of research projects. We are presently preparing a funding call on medicinal plants and on the industrial bioeconomy. For this call, Germany will make available about 2 million euro and Brazil will contribute approximately 1.45 million euro. So it's joint development, research organizations working together, and also joint funding. And through this endeavor, we are hoping to give a big boost to research in these two areas, medicinal plants and industrial bioeconomy, to move the bioeconomy forward. The call that we're preparing will be presented at the Green Rio webinar that will take place in October. And talking about Green Rio, we also regularly participate in Green Rio, and through our research ministry, we are organizing also later this year a global bioeconomy summit to which Brazil is, of course, cordially invited. I think I leave it here as an introduction, and I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. I must say, although this is out of order, that I sit here where I am chairing this webinar exactly in the municipality where Mr. von Karlowitz, who looked at a naked landscape in Freiberg, coined the notion of sustainability, which now everybody on Earth is pretty much aware of. Well, with that small footnote and leaving the discussion for afterwards, may I pass to Carlos Noble? Carlos, would you like to lead us through your presentation?
Yes, good morning, good afternoon to all. Very great pleasure to be able to be in this webinar. Let me see just here if I wanna, if I can.
You want to share the screen, right?
Yeah. Sometimes it's difficult to make these things work.
Don't worry, I will also use the moment to say in your earlier career, you've had a lot to do with the development of the satellite monitoring systems that have told us over the last decades so much about deforestation, and then again about fires and which kinds of fires have been burning in the Amazon. So you've made the transition from observing what is happening to developing a program and a set of ideas to address it so that in future there will be more sustainable use of this biome. Do you think you can manage, or should we activate it from, here it comes.
Okay. Can you see it now?
I cannot see the presentation yet. I see a Zoom screen.
Okay, just 1 second here.
Here it comes.
There we go.
If you put it on
I'm sorry.
presentation mode. Yes.
Yeah, these things are okay.
Yes.
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 Perfect.
Okay. Well, again, thanks again. Very nice to meet you, Dr. Eva Müller, and my friends Marita and Bia. Let me just talk about the Amazon, and I just split my talk 15-minute talk in two issues. First, why we are so concerned. The Amazon is very, very near a tipping point of disappearance, and why we need this novel standing forest bioeconomy. Well, it's very clear, very unlike mid-latitude forests or high-latitude forests. The Amazon forest only exists because the forest exists. It's not only a response to a wet and warm climate, tropical climate. Today, science advanced quite a lot, including Dr. Eva, with a tremendous scientific collaboration between Brazil and Germany for many, many decades. I've been involved in many field experiments with many universities, Max Planck Institute, for over 30 years. So we know there is a key evolutionary accomplishment of the Amazon forest, tropical forest in general, but this is very particular, very efficient, which is very efficient recycling of water. So the Amazon forest transpires water year-round, and also the soils are extremely poor because this is a tropical ecosystem, millions of years of rains leaching out nutrients of the soil. However, there is a very efficient recycling of nutrients. This is done by soil microfauna. So it's an evolutionary system that evolved, and the forests are there because the forest is there. So only exists because the forest is there and exists. So this is very particular. And when the Europeans came in 16th century, they had no idea. They look at this exuberant forest and they thought, well, you know, the soils are very rich, and so therefore they knock down forests and replaced by agriculture. And really, that is probably not the way we could have devised a way to develop the tropics in general. So, of course, we know for 50 years we've been affected by deforestation, high rates, all global tropics, particularly in the Amazon. We have now about 17% of the Amazon basin. You see here in green, where the forest is. In tropical South America, it's a little bit more than the basin. And then this, like 15 to 17%, this is the black and red, are deforested areas. And deforestation is increasing, unfortunately, in the last few years, is reaching very dangerous levels. So why we are so concerned about the tipping point? Because we are seeing unfolding before our eyes all these elements. I will just sum up in this slide. Extreme climate events, droughts and floods are more frequent. This is due to global warming, but also to deforestation. Dry season in southern Amazon is 3 to 4 weeks longer, especially over deforested areas. This is a reality. So it's very, almost no places in the planet you are seeing the dry season becomes lengthier like we are seeing southern Amazon. Forests in southern Amazon also show reduced water recycling. They are transpiring less. Forests are removing less carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. This is also, we are observing that. They're losing this capacity as an important ecosystem service. And mortality rates are increasing over southern Amazon and eastern Amazon. So this is really the picture that makes us very concerned. And then we are, afraid we are very close to this tipping point. On the right-hand side, you see here these two stable biomes. One is forest remaining in Western Amazon near the Andes because the rainfall is very high, and then up to 70% of the Amazon turning into a degraded savanna. It's a tropical savanna, but degraded, holding 1/3 less carbon. So if that happens in 30 to 50 years, we lose 300 billion tons of carbon dioxide, making it much more difficult to reach the Paris Accord targets. So that's why we are making warnings in the last couple of years that we are very close to this tipping point. And one of our calculations showed that if the deforestation in the Amazon exceeds 20 or 25% of the total forest, remember we are 15 to 17, we will exceed the tipping point, and then a savannization becomes irreversible. So this is really what the situation is. And the question is, can we avoid the tipping point? And or putting in a different way, is it possible a zero deforestation economic development model in the Amazon? Zero deforestation, and actually with forest restoration. And so let's look at the two very opposite ways land use models in the Amazon. First way, in what we call first way in our project, it's this: the Amazon has the largest protected areas in the tropics. In all tropical forests, 47% of the Amazon is indigenous territories or conservation units. And these are being seen historically over the last 50 years as obstacles to economic quote unquote development. And unfortunately, this trend has gained momentum in the last few years in Brazil and other Amazonian countries like Bolivia and Peru. So this is the areas, protect 47%. You see it's all spread all over the Amazon. However, there is the second way, which is a resource-intensive development, production of commodities like meat and soy, and energy and oil, natural gas, mining. So this is the development mode that led to this high rates of deforestation and fires. So the question, is it necessary to get rid of the forest to do a real development? So those are the questions that we posed to us. Of course, one may say, well, let's try sustainable intensification of current agricultural models and also keeping the protection of those areas. However, we are seeing in the last decades, this is necessary, but it's not sufficient. So how to ensure protection of the forest and biodiversity and climate stability? What else? And then we thought about looking for solution spaces. These two interwoven ideas: forest restoration. Clearly, this is a project for all over the world. We could see in Dr. Eva's presentation how important is forest restoration in Germany. This is true. I mean, forest restoration is the natural climate change mitigation, the least expensive, and has a lot of other ecosystem services, but also a standing forest bioeconomy. And that's why we are proposing this new concept, what we call Amazonia 4.0. This is innovative standing forest, flowing rivers type of bioeconomy. I will go quickly through showing what our ideas are in developing these new concepts. I think most of you in Europe as well, of course, you know today what acai is. Acai is a traditional palm tree that indigenous populations have been using as food, a very important food for thousands of years. And in fact, they developed the so-called gardens, indigenous gardens, in which they had more acai trees all over the Amazon. So this acai palm tree is the most common individual in the Amazon forest. And that's why because they use that. So acai was, until 20 years ago, 1 out of 1,000 forest products used by local communities. But then all of a sudden, it reached global markets, and it's a very important also product coming from the Amazon. It gets back $1 billion a year to the Amazon economy. And also, of course, cacao, which has been, cacao is from the Amazon. The Europeans found cacao in Mexico and brought to Europe and developed chocolate. But in fact, that cacao in Mexico came from the Amazon and was taken by indigenous groups to Mexico. So we make a comparison: acai, soy, cacao, cattle. And in fact, I will just show one result, only one result. Well, we can see here the acai, you know, before 1985 was very small areas there producing acai. Today is most of the Brazilian Amazon producing close to 300,000 tons of acai pulp, which are exported from the Amazon to the world and also to other parts of Brazil. It benefits 300,000 people in the Amazon. Just let me show you this statistics that comes from the Brazilian Statistics Bureau, IBGE. This is real data. Very few people know this data, and it's interesting that people should know. I'm putting here the data from the census 2017, agricultural census all over Brazil, but I'm putting here only the six Amazonian states. Meat and soy uses 240,000 square kilometers, something like 40% of the size of Germany, and they generated 3.8 billion euros, 150 euros per hectare. Acai berry, cacao.
You got the sorry, Carlo. They generated 14.5 billion, right?
No, I said 3.8 billion euros.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I made the conversion.
Right. Yes.
I made the conversion on the right-hand side here, because I don't know how many people know what reais Brazilian currency is, but it's 14.5 billion reais a year, or 3.8 billion at the exchange rate in 2017. So that's equivalent to 150 euros per hectare per year. Acai berry, cacao, and Brazil nuts, 5.1 billion reais a year, 1.3 billion euros a year. They use a little bit less than 4,000 square kilometers in agroforestry systems and also forestry extractivism. So this is over 3,000 euros per hectare per year. This is official data. That's why these agroforest systems are improving the well-being of Amazonian people, the 300,000 people living in the Amazon now using agroforest systems. They are improved, but still they are poor. They make something between 3,000 and 5,000 euros a year. Still they are poor. So that's why we are asking the question, what's the potential of a biodiversity-driven new bioeconomy, standing forests, flowing rivers, to produce a viable, feasible value chain for all these industries: food, beverage, nutraceuticals, cosmetics, pharmaceuticals, genetic resources, etc., etc., etc. And this is Dr. Eva, is a very fundamental difference between mid-latitude and high-latitude forests and the tropical forests. In 1 hectare of a tropical forest, you may have several thousand of different species. So this is unique biological evolutionary systems in the tropics. So, I mean, is it true that you remove thousands of species and replace with grass for cattle, and there is no other way? So that's why science has really to rescue back traditional knowledge, because the indigenous populations lived there. So how difficult is to add value to this biodiversity richness in a decentralized mode? There is over 4,000 different communities, villages, cities, indigenous groups living in the Amazon, Brazilian Amazon. So we have to think of a decentralized mode. And Amazonia 4.0 is really using modern science and combining with traditional knowledge to look at the modern systems of the fourth industrial revolution to harness these tremendous biological and biomimetic assets. It's like applying 21st century, the knowledge paradigm, bring that knowledge paradigm to the heart of the Amazon. So basically the pillars are, we want to develop this new sustainable bioeconomy, which is fair in generating social inclusiveness, income to all the Amazon people, fair sharing of benefits to all the Amazonian people, including traditional populations, and also contribute to large forest restoration. So we are developing the project now. It's a big challenge how to bring Industry 4.0 to the heart of the Amazon, but we are advancing. I will very briefly now in the last 3 minutes to comment about these two initiatives that we are trying to implement right now. And we certainly would love to have collaboration with Germany in all those aspects. One, it's the capacity development strategies, one we call Amazon Creative Labs, and the other one is Rainforest Business School, led by Dr. Marita. And the Amazon Creative Labs are really modern, one might call a biofabrics. It's a very modern, using Industry 4.0, modern technologies to do value adding to these value chains. Cacao, cupuaçu is another very close relative to cacao to make a beautiful, tasty chocolate. Another one is Brazil nut. We are also doing for acai or for other things, but also the high potential is genomics. We are developing one of those labs to take the possibility of local populations to do genome sequencing, to do the genome sequencing of plants, animals, and also now, because of COVID-19, microorganisms, because as you know, the Amazon has the highest species diversity of microorganisms. There are thousands of coronavirus species in the Amazon. So we have to understand, to learn, and to protect the ecological balance to avoid pandemics. So this is one initiative we are developing now. We're starting the construction of the first one for the cacao cupuaçu value chain. And the second part is led by Dr. Marita, and she certainly can make much better in-depth comments about that, which is the Rainforest Business School, which is really a new, very innovative way of transferring knowledge. It's centered in the Amazon, and also it aggregates existing knowledge, experiences. It's very innovative because it's going to bring the Amazonia 4.0 technologies to bear for in the field, for rural populations, also for urban populations. It will also promote regular forum for this vision of the sustainable Amazon, and also it will promote sustainability. We do not have in the global tropics a rainforest business school as this one, so it's very important element of this new bioeconomy for the Amazon, standing forests, flowing rivers. I will use, Dr. Eva, your one of your last slides just to make a comment here, an Amazonian vision of the very nice ideas that you bring into the discussion. Of course, we need zero deforestation very rapidly to avoid the crossing the tipping point. Also, for the rural populations, working with sustainable management of the forest. In the Amazon, of course, is agroforestry, agroecological systems to restore forest. They are there. There are over 400 different projects, but they are all small scale. We need to scale it up, and they already increase income of those populations. But as I said, still they are poor. They never reach middle class, only working in that basic agroecological systems. Recognition of the rural forests. Yes, this is Amazonia 4.0, how to add value to the tremendous value, potential value of biodiversity. And of course, developing a strategy, a national strategy for bioeconomy, very challenging in Brazil, but that's what we are pursuing. In the last 1 or 2 months, finally this discussion is reaching a large interest in Brazil by governments, private sector, and also universities. to bring this innovative, disruptive standing forest flowing rivers bioeconomy. So I just want to end. That's the concept, you know, to add value to the heart of the forest, or one might say the Amazon is the biological heart of the planet, so saving the heart of Mother Earth. So that's the overall concept, to bring modern technologies to empower local Amazonian populations for a new economy. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Carlos. So much in a short time. And yet I have one complementary question, because the Amazon 4.0 mentions standing forest and flowing rivers bioeconomy. And I understand we already received also some questions on the water aspects. I think the Amazon holds some 40 or 20% of all of the world's fresh water. And there's a lot of bioeconomy potential also in there. So maybe just only a line before I would ask Dr. Eva Müller to respond to some of the areas and themes you have highlighted. Do you hear me?
Are you asking me or Dr. Eva Müller?
No, I was asking you about the water aspect. Because
okay.
in your presentation, you mentioned standing forests and flowing rivers, but you might want to add a sentence on the importance of the waters in the Amazon region.
Absolutely, yeah. Fortunately, we are at the era in which it's totally doable to have renewable energy feeding the world with sufficient energy, distribute energy, inexpensive energy. Germany is certainly one of the top examples of successful migration towards renewable energy. So Brazil's energy needs can be fully met by renewable energy, solar, wind, and a few others. So we do not need these huge hydropower dams, which bring a lot of problems. They completely change the ecology of aquatic systems. They disturb the lives of hundreds of thousands of local populations. So it's not necessary anymore. So that's why we call a bioeconomy with flowing rivers. We can meet all the energy needs of Amazonia and also all of Brazil with renewable energy. So really the idea is, and also of course to take also the, you know, a bioeconomy based on biodiversity. The Amazon has a tremendous diversity in aquatic systems. So that's it's a simple concept, but fortunately, and we all always look as Germany as one of the examples of migration towards renewable energy. Brazil uses less fossil fuel than Germany. However, Germany is moving much faster towards renewable energy in Brazil.
Thank you. Dr. Müller, would you like to try a reply to some of the issues which have been raised? I mean, in a sense, it comes down to being much more ambitious if one wants to reach a zero deforestation goal, if one wants to make bioeconomy competitive with other short-term minded economies. It's a question of scale and of science. So there is a lot of collaboration already between Germany and Brazil, but maybe on the science and bioeconomy side, you would have some ideas how in the medium and long term, because this is not just one project, this is a relationship of science institutions that could possibly be strengthened, question mark, for the next 10 years. And it would do a lot, I imagine, for meeting the Paris Climate Accord goals and others similars.
Well, first of all, thank you very much. First of all, I think we are really both going into the same direction. And I really like this model of Amazonia 4.0, moving towards a biodiversity-driven bioeconomy in Brazil. In Germany, we are also moving more and more towards a bioeconomy. In the case of forests, it's less, I would say, biodiversity based, more based on wood, because we do not have the biodiversity you have in the Amazon forest. So for our forest owners, the main product is still wood. There are some other products they use, but they don't have as much potential as, you know, the incredibly rich biodiversity you have in the Amazon. But of course, we also have the other services our forests provide that are very important for the climate, for the water, and for recreation very much in Germany. So I think we are, in our thinking, we go into a very similar direction. And another thing I still wanted to say before I come to the science is that we have a huge debate in Germany about the future of our forests. And there are many people who say, well, you know, we've mismanaged our forests, and in the future we should leave them alone so that they can grow old and become biodiversity rich and store as much carbon as possible. That's one way of doing it. Meaning essentially that you put a fence around forests and you leave them alone. And I believe there are similar proposals for the Amazon, saying, you know, the Amazon forest is being destroyed, we need to conserve it. As you said, there are already 47%, which is legally protected. But if you protect 100%, what are all the people who are living there going to do? So we need to move to a model that provides economic opportunities to the people who live in the forest or who own the forests. And to me, that's really the way to go. And generally, this is not large scale. This is actually going to be smaller scale, because you have many communities in the forest. You have many different potential products that could come from the forest and be part of the bioeconomy. And so you have the opportunity to use all of that in a sustainable way. Now I'm coming to the science. I think what we are doing at the moment, establishing a collaboration between our research organizations and yours, with the help and partnership of the ministries, is also a very good model for the future. We are still pretty much at the beginning. I mean, we're now going to issue the first calls. We are going to learn from them, and I think we are both going to benefit from them. So I'm very optimistic that this model that we are just developing for our collaboration on the bioeconomy through the scientific cooperation is really a model that we can develop much further in the future. But as I said, you know, we are at the beginning. We are developing something that to me has a lot of potential. We don't know exactly how it's going to work out, but I see this as a future model where we can probably do a lot more.
It sounds very encouraging. And in a sense, if I go back to both your presentations, there are two lines that one could discuss. One is the standing forest bioeconomy, with all those different products that can be developed, discovered, science-based bioeconomy, in addition to the traditional bioeconomy which Amazonia has always had. But there's the other point. There are millions of hectares of degraded pasture land already, and there is a need for significant afforestation. Which, as Carlos, you pointed out, will probably not, even if native species are planted, will not replicate the wonderful original ecosystems, but could be a very important factor in stabilizing and avoiding the tipping point. So maybe if I could ask you, Carlos, to come back on this point in terms of the need and the potential for afforestation?
Yes, for sure. In the whole Amazon, we have about 1 million square kilometers deforested, which is between 15 and 17% of the total forest area. Out of that, we may have something like 300,000 square kilometers highly degraded or abandoned. So the tremendous potential for forest restoration. Secondary forests holds something like 70 to 80% of biodiversity, although it's not identical to the undisturbed forest, but still very biodiverse. And also it holds about 80 to 90% of the carbon that are primary forest stores. So it does this tremendous ecosystem service of removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. And also, of course, you know, this is such a huge area that you can think of a small fraction of that area in agroforestry systems, because if you have, let's say, 1/3, 100,000 square kilometers agroforest systems, you can have 500,000 people or close to 1 million people living out of these agroforest systems. So it's not necessary to convert all the forest areas into agricultural or agroecological systems. Most of the area can go back to become a secondary forest. So that's why, you know, it's perfectly feasible to have a model in the Amazon in which most of the area will be covered by primary forest, more than 50%, and then fraction restoring forests, and then out of that, a developed agroforestry system. So this is all feasible, possible, and that would generate a very powerful economy for, in particular with industrialization, that's the key element, really for the well-being and livelihoods of perhaps 15, 20 million people all over the Amazon. So this is very, very much feasible model, but we have really to work very hard towards achieving that.
Thank you.
If I may just comment on that, if you have a large area of really degraded land and you leave that to regenerate, you may have to help regeneration a little bit, unless you have sufficient seed sources around so that the original vegetation can slowly come back. I've worked a lot in Costa Rica on the development of secondary forests, and they had fantastic secondary forest development, but because the country is so small and it's a mosaic of different land uses, and you still have always natural forest areas close by that provide a source for seeds so that the degraded areas can regenerate. That's one thing. If you want to do agroforestry, also, I mean, if you have a degraded area in the beginning, you need to somehow restore soil fertility, meaning that you will not be able to generate good harvests from day one on. You need some time so that the soil can recover and you can actually produce something in the agroforestry system. And this is where maybe government support would be needed, or some kind of a support program to help the people actually establish these agroforestry systems, especially in the initial phase when they will not be able to generate much harvest from these areas.
Absolutely, Dr. Eva. There is a number of good experiments going on in the Amazon, although it's about 400, but although this is compared to the whole area of the Amazon, still small. But exactly what you said, in highly degraded, formerly pasture land needs specialized systems to create an agroforest system. There is, fertilization of the soils and all those things. And so there is some good examples in Brazil, even programs supported by the Brazil's agricultural research enterprise, Embrapa, and they have very many experiments on how to do this forest restoration. Yes, you're right. When the degraded area is very near exuberant forest, sometimes there is a natural regeneration. But I would say more than 50% of this forest restoration will require further support. There has to be using technologies, and also it will cost. Estimates say it may be something like between 500 and 1,000 euros per hectare for supporting this forest restoration in the Amazon.
May I, because in the shortness of the remaining time, mention two more areas which maybe you could shortly come back on. One is building up the Rainforest Business School. The purpose is to educate more people about standing forest bioeconomy, all the way from the local producers to through the value chain to the markets. And so an exchange at the academic and teaching level would be very interesting. The main seat of the university is now in the state of Amazonas, the largest state in the Brazilian Amazon. And of course, we follow it closely and continue to support it out of the University of São Paulo. So one question is academic teaching collaboration, course modules, case studies, all of this is of great interest. The other related but separate question is bioeconomy also requires very careful governance. It has a lot to do with intellectual property rights, and it would be interesting to maybe think about some conversation or courses or conferences discussing, as we've discussed standing forest concepts today, the different concepts in Europe and in Brazil, because this is something, as this economy is supposed to scale up and grow, that must have a very, very clear framework. So I don't know, maybe Dr. Müller could come in on this one still.
Yeah, relating to the first question regarding exchange at the academic and teaching level, in principle, yes. I'm just wondering what German professors could contribute in a practical way, because I believe the Rainforest Business School is really more practice oriented and not, let's say, so much research and academic oriented. Maybe I'm wrong, because it's supposed to train
needs to bring
people.
the two together. It needs to sort of bring the science to people who may not be scientists, but unless they become more cognizant of it, one would see trouble. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, German academia and German universities, and my question would be, what would we be able to contribute specifically in this area?
Yeah, no, I think we could certainly make an outline of very specific themes on which guest professorships or exchanges would be extremely useful. Just building on the specific experience areas that some German universities and research institutes have. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Now, on governance, would you have any advice?
Maybe just one more sentence on the academic exchange. My ministry does such exchanges. We do promote exchanges between scientists, between Germany and other countries. We have for example, with China, we have an exchange on a scientific basis. So that's something that would be feasible within the context of what we do. On the governance, I'm not so familiar with the issue of intellectual property rights in Europe versus in Brazil. Speaking generally, exchanges are always good because I think we can always learn from each other. And I would imagine that in Europe, we have pretty well developed and defined systems. They may not be exactly applicable or transferable to the Brazilian situation, but an exchange would probably be beneficial in terms of learning from each other. This is not very specific, I'm afraid, but it's not an area where I do have a lot of knowledge.
I mentioned it because it is an area that is sometimes brought up in Brazil in terms of the safety and security. And of course, if you have one of the world's most biodiverse areas, you know, this is something to create. There is a framework, but probably as we talk, it could use some close look and strengthening. Yes. Mm-hmm. Carlos, would you like to come in on this?
Yes, I think I just would like to make an additional suggestion. Of course, there has been for a long time scientific collaboration between Brazilian research institutions and German research universities and also Max Planck institutes, etc. But perhaps for Amazonia 4.0 and Rainforest Business School, we should explore the possibilities of having a more focused collaboration with the Fraunhofer institutes, because I think, you know, we are after solutions. We are, you know, searching, looking for solutions, and of course the Fraunhofer paradigm is one of the top in the world, where you bring together interests of the private, the business sector, R&D, advanced R&D, with governments, with also in Germany, the local state governments. But anyway, I think, you know, I would certainly like at least to leave it as a suggestion for us to seek collaboration with the Fraunhofer, because I think the Fraunhofer has historically developed exactly what we need in Amazonia 4.0. You have this challenge, you need a new technology, a new system. It's based also in basic science sometimes, but mostly applied science. So I just want to leave this as an opportunity, perhaps for us to seek collaboration with the Fraunhofer Institute in some of these big challenges in the Amazon.
Bia, you are the host. So I look at my watch and it says that maybe we have to come to closing statements from each of our presenters. So maybe first over to you, Dr. Müller.
Well, I would say this was a very, very interesting exchange we had. Again, you know, there are big differences between our countries, starting with the science, and also big differences between our forests. But I also see quite a few similarities, and I have the feeling that we are really moving into a very similar direction. And that we can, through our existing collaboration and maybe in the future expanding in certain areas, also not only learn from each other, but help each other move forward in this. So I really appreciated having this opportunity to speaking with you, and thank you also very much to Carlos Nobre for the extremely interesting presentation. And I hope that we will continue our exchange maybe in a different opportunity, but we should continue it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Carlos, would you like to say some closing words?
Yes, also I have to thank all of you, and particularly Bia for organizing, Marita for moderating, and also Dr. Eva. My pleasure to have having met you and seeing your vision, your very in-depth vision about the role of forests in Germany, but also for the planet. And also I want to say that always, Germany in the last 30 years, other European countries, but Germany has always been a leader in seeking sustainability, a world towards sustainability, and we need urgently change the course of action in all sectors, in energy sector, in food and agricultural systems, in protecting biodiversity. So I'm very glad to be able to develop a project in collaboration with Germany, because Germany has been always our role model in moving towards sustainability with social justice, improving the livelihoods of all the population. Of course, Germany also has fought internally for a number of reasons, how quickly to abandon fossil fuels, all those elements, strong democracy. But we really, in Brazil at least, we would like to see ways in which we could collaborate with Germany, many institutions in Germany, seeking sustainability. For us, Brazilians, people from the Amazonian countries, we have to find a sustainable pathway for the Amazon. And it would be a great pleasure also and I'm sure a number of German institutions would like to contribute to that because of this global concern. Germany has been leading a lot of efforts in finding sustainable solutions for the planet, not only for the country. So I'm very glad to have been part of this webinar, and I'm looking forward to future collaborations.
Thank you very much. Also from my side, I feel it's a dialogue which has started and has a good chance to be continued. And the subject is important enough to keep everybody together. Thank you very much. And thank you, Bia. Last word is yours.
Oh, thank you very much. I can only thank each one of you. It was a very rich webinar in every sense. From you, Marita, who coordinates this so well, Dr. Miller, Dr. Carlos Nobrek, and I think I can call you both Carlos and Eva. And I'm very happy to tell everybody that was, since the first minute, that keep on watching our webinar. This is a very important information that the people are attentive, and then we are getting so much inputs that would allow us to even consider a follow-up of this webinar. So rich it was. And just to let you know, everybody who is watching, that this presentation will be available in the Green Hill website. And and also this presentation, this webinar will be in YouTube available. So thank you, each one of you who gave us your time and your attention. And you are going to meet again, Carlos and Eva and Marita in Green Hill next October. They'll be there. And
I'm looking forward to it.
All of you, October 8th and 9th. It's a great, great pleasure to have you. I can only thank you very much and hope to see you very soon. Bye-bye, and thank you again, everyone who watched. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Ciao.